Oh, there aren't any wigs stuck in the transportation at Dover, are there?
Yeah.
My Ingrid Pitt one didn't arrive.
Your Ingrid Pitt one didn't arrive.
I was very disappointed. I thought I might have to dress up as the murker.
Jason's already beaten you to it. Hello and welcome to Talking About. We are on to season 21. This is part 1. I'm Paul P-Bal. Like us, subscribe to us, and you get alerts, get a notification. I'm joined by...
Hello, it's James.
Hello, it's Jason.
James is going to sell us some Quaker's Oats.
Are you being pinged by YouTube now? Are you getting the notifications?
No, I'm on dial-up. I only see things once a week.
Yeah, I'm starting to get the ping notification of when the new videos go up.
And Jason watches them and he doesn't have a clue what's happening in them because he wasn't part of it.
It helps me to remember.
Like, oh, I've not seen that story. I should watch it. Anyway, that's fairly early for Jason Bate. We are starting the season with Warriors of the Deep. So whose turn is it to open for us?
Oh dear, it's well. I'll take the start on this one, and I'm going to quote a line from the episode. There should have been another way, and oh my God, there should have been another way on this one, because what a start to the season! It's a real clunker. I mean, you think about the premise of this story. We've got the Silurians returning. We've got the Sea Devils returning. It's the start of a new season. We're just coming off having had the Fabulous Five Doctors. Should have been brilliant. Instead, it's a real letdown. And I'm not quite sure what doesn't. In fact, no, I am sure what doesn't work in this. Pretty much just about everything. It's clear that it's a troubled production, but it's lacking in so many areas, and not even the appearance of the murker can even lift this one by any stretch of the imagination. So that's my starter for 10. It's not a very good one, this.
Wow, we can only go upwards from here, can we? I think maybe. I don't know. I think there is a sort of dash of season 20 in this, in the fact that we at length talked about season 20 and some of the things they tried to do and some of the things that really didn't work. And you're right, they brought back the Silurians, they brought back the Sea Devils. It's essentially a base under siege story, so you think, oh, we should be on quite solid ground with this story. It should be all right. But I think, don't get me wrong, there are some elements about this I do like, and we'll come on to that. But I don't necessarily think I like it because it was designed that way. I mean, I know I'm going to make an early reference to this scene, which I just think is one of the funniest scenes in Doctor Who ever. I don't think it was necessarily supposed to be funny. However, I do find it hilarious. But I look forward to this moment because I just think it's brilliant. I wish it was a longer scene. There's lots of things when you sat watching this, even down to the way like the Sea Devils move. In some of the shots, you've got their heads at a 45-degree angle because the costumes aren't quite right. There's lots of different bits and pieces, and the plot is, you've got two blocks. It's supposed to be like the Cold War but set in the future. You've got two blocks that have got nuclear missiles trained at each other in a standoff. That's not exactly a new style plot. But when it comes together, for me, it doesn't land. It should be on really, really safe ground, and it doesn't seem to make it that way, personally.
Funny, I don't mind Warriors of the Deep, actually. I think people, it's quite easy to hate it, because it's quite easy to target the very obvious things which could be wrong with it and ride with it. I think actually later on there's a couple of things which probably are held in better regard that you probably could shoot down a bit more easily, maybe. Yeah, people always, the big criticism that people have, Merker aside, what I will say, I mean, for anyone who hasn't listened to the Who Talk commentary on this, it's actually a riot, because everybody involved in doing it actually had a lot to say, and they were quite positive. The DVD commentary, as you might suspect, with Peter and Janet on it, is a little bit down on it, and that's terrible, that's terrible, that's terrible. Oh, I only had one costume for 7 years, or what, you know, the usual. But this is actually quite cheerful, and Mark is actually trying to work out all the way through the different, because obviously he's, you know, his origin, so he's trying to work out the origins of the different, and what the Merker could possibly be sort of inspired by. It's actually quite fun. So the Merker obviously is a bit of a, you know, it is the guys from Rent a Ghost, isn't it? But it's, you know, and but the lighting, I think, is what people always go for. They always say it's too bright, it shouldn't be bright. Sort of conversely, if you got a space age sea base, why would you rattle about in the dark? Why would you be doing that? You wouldn't. You know, I don't. I suspect there's probably parts of it where if they'd gone to missile and they dipped it dark and had some red, you know, but all that's a film. You've got to have weeks of production. You've got to be making a film to do that. You don't want a snap election and your studio time cut off and just get it in the can. So I don't mind some of the obvious things. I mean, there's that bit, isn't there? You could sort of forgive it if you said that they've heated through the door to melt it, but that door flops more than Clifford's wrist when it's on top of Tegan, doesn't it?
That's awful.
So you do have that kind of awkward, it's really heavy. Is it kind of acting? And then it's just like, I know. Yeah. But I don't think it holds up. I think it's got a good pace to it. I didn't find myself getting bored with it. There are parts of it where it's a bit strange. The Silurians and the Sea Devils are all sort of suddenly very aware of their own continuity and what they're called and stuff now, aren't they? They're like, you are my Sea Devil. You know, it's all kind of like, oh, you're branded now. Have you gone with that? I thought it was just the guy in the Sea Fort that called you a Sea Devil. I was like, but we're going with that. That's our name, lads.
And I love the need for the Silurians now to have the eye flashing whenever they spoke, because that was never a thing back in the 70s.
No, but I suppose on the black and white prints, it might have been less noticeable when they were viewing it, maybe. I don't know. I've got the toy set, though, the character options toy set, where you get 3 of the same figures, but with different colours on them.
Yeah. But the Sea Devils look like they've got padded underpants. They walk really slowly and...
Whoa. You've been looking at the Sea Devil downstairs. I mean, there are times are hard, but
you know, I know they've been asleep for a long time, but when they sort of come out of hibernation, they're not exactly, you know, you could quite easily run away from them.
They have great feet, don't they? The Sea Devils. They're struggling with their foot action. Yeah, quite noticetably.
Yeah, and they've got quite a great walk with it.
That's what I mean. They walk. They sort of
a little bit like this.
You were talking about their crotch. You didn't mention their feet.
But I think the problem with these Sea Devils costumes is, whereas they only had that sort of netting effect back in the 70s, and the bits where the actor obviously looks out of it, it was a little bit lower possibly. They had to almost lift the the sea devil head right up, and then it sort of becomes a little bit floppy. And in one scene, there's one sea devil with that big. They put helmets on as well to attack the base, which I think is absolutely an amazing extra thing. But the guy with the one helmet and his mask just does this.
Yeah, in the background, in the sort of like final scenes, his head's at a 45-degree angle. You just feel sorry for him because you just want someone to just go, put your head back a bit. Yeah.
There isn't much reasoning either, I suppose, why. I mean, obviously it followed on through to our recent spectacular, but there's no quite real reason why the Sea Devils have decided to dress like samurai.
Well, now they're pirates now, aren't they? So I mean, they just.
But the thought process, I believe, with the original Sea Devils was the netting and stuff was that they got it from fishermen, and that was just that was the there were lizards, and I don't know, it'd be like Winnie the Pooh putting a shirt on but no pants. The Sea Devils like, oh, we've got to cover up, let's get a net on. So I think that was the thoughts with that. Whereas this kind of notion that they're all very smartly tailored, and they've got they put the samurai helmets on to go attack the sea base, when presumably they've swum part of it. I don't know. They have got that little nifty ship, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, I quite like that sequence at the beginning. It's very Stingray because you're watching it, and the little submarine comes across, and some of those sequences are actually not bad.
The model work's gorgeous. I think I love all the models. All the underwater base and the satellite that sort of shoots.
The satellite it's just when they get into the interior of the base, and that's when it kind of, you are looking at endless corridor running, the Murka. It's a little bit. I mean, again, the bit where Peter Davison has that fight and then flips over backwards into the water. That part of the set, when he's on that sort of balcony, the wall wobbles, and you just think he's going to end up in that water in a minute. But actually, part of the set visibly shakes before he does that. And you just think, how safe was this for doing a stunt from when it didn't?
It also leads into like one of the worst cliffhangers where he's just hit the water and Turlough's like, leave him, he's dead.
He's dead. He's not drowning. He's dead.
Done with that now. I was trying to kill him off. All I needed for him to do was just fall into the water. That was fine.
And it's not even a particularly big fall either. It's not, he just falls into the water off the balcony, and then he's like floating to the surface like he's and then all of a sudden he comes alive again at the beginning of the following episode.
I mean, he might get a 7 for the roll because he does a back roll, doesn't he? There's a bit of something into that.
There's a little bit of effort, but and of course that saw off part of his outfit because it shrank with the water. So he gets a slightly different variant of his costume because it shrank.
Back to crotches again, aren't we? You're watching this in a very specific way, aren't you?
I'm saying nothing.
He's shameless under that wig. He's shameless. There's lots of nice little touches of humour throughout it. There's that bit in there where Turlough and the Doctor are heaving on the door, and Tegan just slides it open, and it's like, and the "what have you been eating" thing when they put the hood on, and he's obviously meant to have some kind of garlic, and then Tegan's like, "What have you been eating?" They're just little touches of humour which are quite nice. Guest cast. I mean, it's a very starry guest cast.
It is a good guest cast.
I'm led to believe, and I'm not going to name names here, I'm led to believe that Ingrid Pitt struggled to remember her lines. I think it's the process of being a film actress, isn't it? If you're a film actress, you remembered your 3 lines for the scene, and then you could just do the next 3 lines. Whereas this was a bit more. Can you remember? You remember a few scenes, Ingrid, love? Is it all right?
And this was her idea, the kung fu against the Murka. She wanted it to be an extended fight sequence, but she basically got one good kick and then electrocuted.
It's like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, isn't it? It's Doctor Who's equivalent.
I love the bit at the beginning where she's sort of like, she ducks and everything, and then she just goes in for the kick, and then that's it. It's like, oh.
They sway in motion together, don't they? They do the left and the right.
I like to think the two guys in the costume had no idea that she was about to attack them. They were just like, oh my God, she's going to kick us.
It was definitely the okey cokey, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But you can see she just, I think there is I mean, she's obviously an eminent actress, but somewhere along the line, she's struggling just a little bit with this story. And obviously, I think you're right, P-Bal, that jump from film into TV possibly, but she almost feels like she's sort of, she doesn't really know what's going on around her particularly, a bit a la Bella Reed, Bella Reed possibly on this one.
I think that's just it. Do you know, I mean, even down to film performances and stuff, if you watch her in any of the Hammers or anything else like that, I think that's just Ingrid. I think that's how she performs. I don't think she was confused, but I think that's just Ingrid.
Is it The House That Drips Blood that she's in with John? I mean, when they both turn up in the sort of Bessie-style car at the beginning, she is just brilliant. But her range, shall we say, isn't as wide maybe as other actresses. She tends to play that kind of same character very well over the years. You know, she built a career on it.
There's a great fight sequence with her and Queen Xanxia in Who Dares Wins. That's worth a watch if you see her when they go for it. That women fighting is like in my top 10 thing. I mean, that's a bit creepy, but I mean, like a fight in a fountain or something like that. We didn't get enough of that in Doctor Who. There are a few. There's quite a funny part, isn't there, with the Merc when he kills Ian McCulloch, and because he's just been painted, he's still got. He has the green up his arms, doesn't he, from the paint? There's a few bits of Merca left on the walls as well, where it passes a bit too close to the bright white wall. It's like, just put the gloss on the Merca.
And somewhere along the line, the Merca doesn't look as easy to operate as Dobbin, the pantomime horse, was in Rent-A-Ghost. It looks a little bit more cumbersome.
It's back to feet, isn't it? Because when you see the Merca's feet, they're like that, aren't they? Yeah. So he's got to sort of flop his way along the corridor.
But I do like, you know, where the Merca sort of leans up against the wall and it electrocutes everybody down the corridor. You know, that's quite a nice. They
all lean against that wall to get electrocuted. They wait somewhat against that wall for the electrocution.
Ready, you know, but it's a concept that had it been slightly better could have come across a lot stronger. But you're right, with the wet paint and everything, it does feel, you know, it was a last minute addition.
I like Tom Adams in this. I think he's got a thought. If you can get, I mean, children of a certain generation will only think of him for DFS adverts. But if you can get that out of your head, he's got a very sort of Troughton Basin to Siege guest star. You know, I think he's a touch of that Peter Barkworth. I don't know. There's a sort of, it harks back to that era, doesn't it? He's very assured, and I think it's a very confident performance, even underneath all, you know, the 80s future styling.
You do expect him to say any minute now, sale must end Monday.
Silurian invasion must end in 2 hours. As it does. And I mean, there is that beautiful line, isn't there, when they're looking at the gas and goes, this gas won't affect you, but it is lethal to marine life. How's this going to end? How can we see this resolving itself in a couple of episodes' time? I don't know. How are we going to get rid of this sea devil invasion? Hexachromite, which isn't a real gas, folks.
It's a good job it isn't. The some of the staging in this is a little bit amdram, I think, as well. There's the bits where the sea devils break down the door. Well, they burst through the door, I should say. This isn't the Merca door, this is the other door. And everybody just lines up in front of them, shooting at them. And they're just getting picked off almost one by one. There's no real, would you just stand there and wait for these people to come, the sea devils to come in through the door shooting at you? Would you just wait?
3 stories down, they'll do the same thing with the Daleks, won't they?
Wow, yeah. They will as well, yes.
And it's just
red dots, on John, it wasn't Eric's fault.
It's just like red dots just pop up everywhere, don't they? These little red dots when they're firing, you know.
Random red dots, not even actually on the actors themselves.
Not actually on the actors or where they were pointing at, just red dot. I mean, I'm at some point we may get an enhanced effect onto this on a Blu-ray box set.
I'm
But
not sure I'd want to watch it again.
It looks like they're trying to irritate some cats, with little red dots all over the shop. it's very odd.
And
I
you're right.
think the darkest point is that when Maddox kills Karina, isn't it? Karina?
Yeah, where he's
Karina,
yeah.
That's quite a horrible sequence that he knows he's doing it, and all that sort of stuff. Well, she's a bit irritating, so it's not the worst thing that she goes quite quickly. But it does feel in some ways that it sort of slightly lacks focus, because the whole sort of Ian McCulloch, Ingrid Pitt thing, that's quite a nice subplot, but that doesn't, I don't know, it does feel slightly like everyone's quite individual within this. There doesn't seem to be, does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. There's because again, like I say, you've got your base under siege, you've got the Silurians and the Sea Devils, and we know from every other time that the Doctor's encountered them, he's tried to break a peace, it's gone terribly wrong, and they've ended up being destroyed or blown up. And this time round, they're like, no, we're not having any of that. We are just going to destroy all the humans and reclaim the planet. So it's kind of that sort of dynamic has changed slightly. You have the whole spies, like you say, Ingrid Pitt and the other guy, who are sort of trying to get the codes to the enemy. So you've got that going on, and it's quite brutal. I mean, like you say, Jason, your opening line, there should have been another way, because pretty much everyone's dead by the time you finish. Sea Devils, Silurians, humans, everybody's slaughtered. And either they're doing it to each other, or they're doing it, from the Murka or from the invaders. So it is quite a dark story in that respect, that you sort of get to the end and go, well, we haven't lost the world, but we have lost everybody on this sea base, pretty much.
The Silurians all die. They die with that kind of snot effects out the eyes, don't they? That's quite and it comes out the goo. Yeah, Jason looked at me then as if I was making that up as well. It's like I'm like an aged actress at the conventions now. Like I think and it went out live, as I remember.
Yeah, it's bright green, isn't it? The stuff comes out of their eyes and their nose, and it's
like me with hay fever.
Ooh.
I mean, even
not actually, just the record. Actually, I was exaggerating a little bit.
I mean, even Turlough kills one of them, doesn't he? He in that sort of final sequence, the Doctor's trying to get them to give them gas, to give them oxygen, to keep them alive, but they end up, being killed anyway. They end up sort of dying, or Turlough kills one of them. It's just quite bleak. By the time you get to the end of it, you're just like, oh my God. It's like, so I think, it's good that there are a few comedy moments in there, but I think some of the comedy moments come from scenes that weren't necessarily written to be funny, but you need something to try and get you through to the end.
I think Peter's on good form with it. I mean, he obviously he makes his exit towards the end of this. He seems to have hit a bit of a stride with it. I think there's a story coming up to, I think, when he's better, and that's probably his peak. But I think he's quite assured in it. I'd say assured, but I wouldn't say commanding still, if that makes sense. I still don't feel that he's quite in charge of the situation.
He's a stronger Doctor in this, but not, like you say, he peaks a bit later on.
Tegan's less moany as well in this one. I think she's quite as brash as she is in other ones.
But they both decided to leave during the filming of this one. They both decided they'd had enough.
Yeah, and I think they, as I say, Peter. Obviously, there's some better stories for Peter in this season, admittedly, but by now he's well settled in the role, and him and Tegan as a companion set, and Turlough, it felt it had settled down into quite a nice TARDIS combo, and was working for me quite well by this stage. And you're right, she isn't quite so whingy in this story, and I think if Peter gone on for another season, possibly, I think he had another season left in him. I mean, this is his last season, but I mean, I think he had another season in him, in my humble opinion.
I think he probably could have. I'm not entirely sure about the lineup of fifth Turlough team. I slightly got a thing against companions with finite existences, that this kind of odd, and I think, and that's not necessarily a criticism on the acting, or it's the character that comes in with, and I feel Mark's actually really badly wasted as it goes on. He works tirelessly, actually, quite often, just behind someone. Just sort of up acting, I think we'll call it, just there. But there's a lot of this where I'm thinking, oh, it's a shame, because he's obviously a very good actor, and it's obviously a very interesting character. But I don't feel, and obviously we'll come to his exits, I don't feel between Mordrin and Planet of Fire there is any sense of this is what the character is, and this is where he's come from, and this is what we'll discover about him. It just seems that he's just what the story requires for the week in some ways. So this is just quite regular, isn't he? And then sort of coming up to Frontiers, you get a bit of
you get a bit of a history, don't you? And then he leaves. It's like, oh, well, now he's got a backstory and he's going to leave anyway.
And why is he still traipsing around in a school uniform? That's the weirdest question we're going to ask ourselves. I mean, I'm not getting all fielding on this, but the moment is like, and I'm not a schoolboy, I'm actually an alien being. Could be the moment where you go, do you know what, I'll ditch the school uniform and wear something else. James isn't going to say anything because he's going to put your school uniform on as soon as this is finished, I feel.
Oh, that's the next cosplay.
But no, it's weird because I don't dislike this story. And like I say, there are elements that I do like. I don't necessarily like it for the way that it wanted to be, but it's still, there are still moments in it I go, I quite like that. I don't, the costumes and things, not a massive fan of. They look really uncomfortable, I have to say. But the themes around this sort of Cold War thing.
Yeah, I think the premise, James, and the setup of the story, and the whole base under siege story, and the fact that you're bringing back returning aliens to us, or returning monsters of the week. See, they weren't aliens, but returning monsters. For me, it should just have been that little bit tighter. That all the components were there to make this a really successful story, and it just got lost somewhere in translation. And it just becomes it's just a little bit of a chore, not an enjoyment to go through this particular 4 episodes.
I mean, there was going to be more reference to sort of Cold War-esque, but that got written out at the last minute because there was a general election and they thought it would be seen as too political. So they had to do some rewrites and basically scale it back a bit. I don't know that would have made a great deal of difference with some of the production values and things like that, but certainly the premise behind the story was quite sound.
Yeah, but I don't get threat from it, James. I'm sitting in put me in the middle of that story, and I'm sat on a whole load of nuclear warheads that are destined to blow half the world up at some point, and I could get blown up at any point. I've got the Silurians and the Sea Devils and the Murky attacking me, and nowhere in that story do I feel menace or threat in any way. That's kind of how it feels. It just feels like it's missed a trick somewhere along the way.
Yeah, I suppose does that come down to character response in some ways, isn't it? If you have an empathy with whoever it is, then you worry about whether they're going to get killed. I mean, there's so many. I mean, it's a classic narrative. I mean, just pulling out 42 or something like that from the new series, where the whole thing relies on you basically caring about them and not wanting them to get picked off one by one, or and I guess in some ways the big failing therefore with Warriors of the Deep, I would agree on this point, is that you're not thinking, I hope Preston doesn't get killed, or I hope that, and there's nothing against the performances or anything. I literally, Preston was just like command of all she got. You're not thinking, I hope he makes it through. He's a good guy. He's got it. And it sort of comes back to those little dashes of character in some ways. I suppose it's a little bit like if we went back, very random, but I mean, like the Hand of Fear, when the nuclear actually phones the family and he has a very human conversation and talks to his child and then his wife, and it's like, you don't want him to blow it because you know who he is. Command of Orshak or any of the others, they are just, they're very sort of underwritten to that point because they don't have a human side. There isn't I suppose there isn't a question that they're like they've got anything beyond just being fodder for being killed off in the script, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. I don't think I've got empathy with the characters, and I wonder if that's because the characterizations in themselves, they're just not fleshed out enough, possibly for us to have the time to care about it, because there is just such a lot going on. You've overloaded it with the Silurians and the Sea Devils and the Murka, and you've got a couple of spies, but there isn't. You're not gonna find empathy in the spies, and I don't think we get to know enough about the characters, or like you say, there's no backstory there for some of them, and we don't get to know any backstory. And again, I think that could partly just be down to, it could be down to the production problems. It could be down to the fact that the script's got heavy cuts because they wanted to take certain things out. It just misses a trick somewhere, and there are many other better base under siege stories in the history of Doctor Who.
What I will say, that having mentioned Preston, is that if you do get the chance to meet Tara Ward, do meet Tara Ward, because she is one of the loveliest, most positive people you could actually ever meet in the world, ever, about anything. So
she's lovely. Yes.
Big up Tara Ward there, so to speak. Do we have any facts?
Yeah, we talked about some of these already. Johnny Byrne claimed that a lot of his original ideas were changed or modified. You mentioned about the lighting, because apparently it's supposed to be dark and atmospheric on the base. That was changed. The Murka introduction, it wasn't anything like he described in his original draft. The ending where everybody died originally, that wasn't supposed to happen like that, and several of them survived at the end in the original version, but in this, pretty much everybody was killed off. Pennant Roberts said that it did not feel like Doctor Who. It was just a sequence of fight scenes that were spliced together around a bit of a loose plot, so didn't feel that it was actually sort of normal Doctor Who. William Perry and John Asquith were the two Rent-A-Ghost Dobbin guys who were in the Murka outfit. That's pretty much it. Ingrid Pitt claimed afterwards that the way that they filmed this sequence wasn't very good. She thought the camera was going to be on the other side, so she wasn't very happy with the final cut either. Even though she didn't get a big fight sequence, she thought they filmed it from the wrong direction. So there we go.
The funny thing with the Johnny Byrne saying the Murka isn't how he envisaged it is, I kind of look at it and say, this is your fourth script, I think. You know what Doctor Who can do. You know the money available for Doctor Who. So when you write giant sea creature attacks base and walks through corridors in studio, I mean, yes, it's not great, but you know exactly by that point what you can do or can't do. So I think to stand back and say, well, I envisage Murka as being a lot better than that. It's like, yeah, but you know exactly at this point what you're writing to and the budget you're writing to, what Doctor Who could do. So I say, shame on you, late great Johnny Byrne.
Oh.
And And it is right. The budgets, unfortunately, didn't in some of these episodes, in some of these stories this season, did not live up to the expectation of the writers. That's for sure.
So you're not on Space 1999 now, mate. We ain't on film. Save it for Heartbeat. See how they deal with the sea monster. Right. Let's get some scores.
Oh no, I will go first. As I say, I don't dislike this story. I think there is potential there, but it's just not fully realised through all the things that we've talked about. And it's one that I have gone back to. It's not like some of the stories we reviewed in the previous season where I was just like, oh, I don't really want to go through those again. It is not a shining example of a great Doctor Who story, but I did give it 5.5. So it's around average for me. Jason's shocked. Jason's
hang on, that's because it's Jason round. 5.5?
5.5.
5.5 ain't round.
Jason had a look of Ingrid Pitt being electrified by by the murky then for a moment.
I'm going to start the Ingrid Pitt dance before I give my scores.
Is it like your K9 dance? K9?
Because James, that's incredibly generous. I've got to say. Okay, okay. So you've pretty much probably already picked up. This is not a favourite of mine in any way. Like I've said, the premise is spot on. If this had just gone through a normal production run and a bit more thought had gone into the sort of costuming and they'd had a bit more time and they didn't have a snap general election and what ifs and studio lighting was better. But it fundamentally comes down to the fact that I think somewhere along the line, the story's missing a beat, whether that's in the script or whether that's in the production. But it's got all the elements, Silurians, it's got Sea Devils, it's got Base in the Seas. We've said it all, but it just doesn't quite work. And it's not a story I would go back to time and time again to rewatch, because actually I don't really enjoy it. It's a little bit of a bore fest and it's lacking quite a lot. And you're right, I think you just said Pennant Roberts felt this wasn't a typical Doctor Who story, and he's probably right. Actually, it does feel like it's a low budget base and nuclear based story that could be a rip-off of a Bond movie or something like that. Just not working for me in any way, shape or form. And I can't, I'm afraid, give a score that's any higher than 2 for this story.
I love the thought of Pennant throwing shade at Warriors of the Deep and then doing Time Lash. That did not feel like Doctor Who to me. However, this with the Bandrel Ambassador, this is pure gold. I'm loving this.
Oh my God.
John Pertwee in it.
Anyway, look, I'm hating on all the people who have left us now. Anyone else? Line them up. 2, I think 2's well harsh, isn't it? Don't forget to troll him if you disagree.
I'm more than happy to be to be.
Jason's just happy for any interaction. To be honest with you, just hit him, hit him up. He's available most nights. Anyway, I am more towards James on the scale here. I think it's not as awful as people would like you to believe. It's not spectacular, and I think Pennant's a safe pair of hands rather than a good pair of hands. A better director might have helped push this into something nicer, because you could probably just got some better shots with it. But the pressures of it, I don't know. Maybe safe's what they needed rather than artistic. You wouldn't have got Paul Joyce in on this one. So I gave Warriors of the Deep 5. I don't mind it. I think it's all right. It's the benchmark for things to come. Which our season opener crawls in then at 12.5.
Yay!
Yay! The solid start.
That would have been like 3rd in season 20.
It'd have been pulling for pole position, wouldn't it? Okay, so we then move on to The Awakening. Not the horror film with the same title.
Every time I Googled it, that's what came up.
Is that a Hammer one? Is it a new Hammer one or Awake? I don't know. It's a horror film in the school, isn't it? It's a good film. It's a good. If in doubt, if you get on Netflix or whatever they call them now, the Brit stream, and you accidentally end up with a film, watch the film instead. It's probably more rewarding. Who has an introduction for The Awakening? And I do have a hardback, but I don't have it with me. It's next door. I failed you.
I will start. So I just wrote a short trip to Little Hodcombe for the Queen of the May brings the TARDIS crew literally face to face with the Malice. And this is a very English two-parter. Tegan is abandoned her wish to go to Heathrow, but decided she wants to go and visit her grandfather instead in Little Hodcombe. And they turn up in the middle of this reenactment of the whatever war it was. I should know, I'm wearing the costume. And yes,
Civil War.
Civil War.
The English Civil War.
The English Civil War. So they turn up and this is being reenacted. But lurking in the church, like almost like a Pertwee-esque plot here, lurking in the church is a hidden evil that is trying to use the sort of psychic power, if you like, of reenacting these war games to reactivate itself, and hoping that the final battle will actually be for real. So everyone is about to get butchered in order for the Malice to fully awaken. So there we go. That's what we're on.
Indeed.
The first thing, sorry, so just to jump on that, the first thing that's really, really strange, and I don't know how much of it's just bad writing and how much of it's taking it down from 4 parts to 2 parts or what. Tegan has sort of browbeaten the Doctor into taking them to visit her grandfather, with whom she has literally no interaction whatsoever. She doesn't even look as if she knows who he is. You would have thought that would have been quite a key part of this story, that she would have had some kind of, she would have had scenes with him, or there'd have been some kind of, it's my grandfather. Nothing.
I spent more time with him than her. He's locked up in a cell with him.
And she doesn't even seem particularly concerned that he's in some sort of danger and not being seen for a couple of days. She doesn't seem to even reference it at all during the story. So potentially those bits were just cut out when they took it from 4 to 2.
Potentially. I mean, she does say at the end, "Can I stay?" Doesn't she? She's like, "I want to spend some time with him because I've not talked to him for 2 episodes."
Yeah. But she literally, I mean, it's not even like there's points in the scenes where they're close together and they're grouped together within the shot. There's just nothing. Turlough has more to do with him.
I think they exchange a line in the TARDIS right at the very end, at the end of episode 2. And that's pretty much the first time we see them interact. And then she wants to stay in Little Hodcombe for a little while to get to know him a little bit better, it feels. So we've moved on to a 2-part story here. And I always think 2 parts are a nice change of pace. In fact, this will be the last of the traditional 2-part stories in the 25-minute format, actually, before the end of the classic run. So that's kind of a fact there. Sorry, James, I've probably one of your facts there. But
The Ultimate Enemy isn't a 2-parter.
Which one? Yeah.
So
anyway,
I did see that one last week.
You've put me off my stride here. No, you haven't. So look, I think this is what I would call a middle of the road Doctor Who story. This is it's neither a classic nor is it a clunker. There are some really nice bits around this, and I remember being particularly impressed watching this the first time round, and I'm still quite impressed with the whole visual effect of the Malice. It's actually quite an ambitious set they've got going on. That whole church set, it's quite big. It's actually, given the sets and the budgets back in the day and Doctor Who, it's actually a really good set. The Malice is well realised. I think the story does suffer a little bit from being cut down. but it's a nice, easygoing pace. It's a bit like Black Orchid, this one. It sort of goes along at quite a nice speed. Probably the ending's a little bit rushed for my liking. But yeah, I think it's quite an interesting concept. It's a real twist in time. It's a real twist in time sort of travel that isn't really, you've got the modern world reenacting what's going on in the past world, and you could almost be mistaken for believing it because it's virtually an entire costume drama. There's only one person that's dressed in modern day clothing in reality, so it could actually be set in the actual Civil War. So yeah, it's a good story. It's not the best, not the worst, but it's an interesting little romp across 2 episodes.
I think the BBC made a savvy saving because I think there's a lot of reused costumes from Sword Divided, isn't there? Because that hadn't long been in production. So I think it's which war shall we reenact? Well, we've got a great bunch of Civil War costumes. If you should go there. Yeah, I'll go there. Drop that in. There are parts of it though, I think, and again, I try not to, if I can help it, be too linear with how the plots work sometimes. I think you can destroy any enjoyment with this thing. And I think there are a few parts with The Awakening where you sort of think, I don't think that really tallies up. But on the positive note, I think it's interesting. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this in the shower the other day. I always think about the liver birds in the shower. I was thinking it's interesting that the 2 instances where you have you have Nerys and Kinder, and you have Polly James in this one, and they're older ladies. They're not old, but they're older ladies. It really works with the 5th Doctor, and there's a sort of thing where you think, oh, do you know what? If only someone had been just that little bit braver in 1982 and said, we've gone for a really young Doctor, but let's have an older companion, and let's just flip this, because we've had older Doctor, younger companion for so long that now we've gone for the younger Doctor. Wouldn't the dynamic be interesting if it was an old? And there is that sort of thing where you look at Kinder and you look at The Awakening and you think, oh, that actually would have been quite cool to just, seize to it, whatever. It would have been brave, and I think it would have been such a good payoff, because there'd have been a bit. I'm not saying that the companion. I sound like I'm hating on any companion going here. It's not that there's this sort of immaturity where or something strange. It's just that it would have just been someone who's a bit more assured in where they're at, counterbalancing his crazy, and I think the dynamic works there. And it's a shame that it wasn't something that was more than a guest part.
Yeah, I
when
think
they're
Nerys would definitely.
Oh, sorry.
I think Nerys would definitely have worked as a companion, and I think you are quite right, P-Bal. It's a missed opportunity here, because I think the older the Doctor, the balance is to probably have a younger companion set. So actually, with Peter at that stage being a little bit, obviously being the youngest Doctor, I think it would actually really have worked to have pitched in an older character as a companion. Obviously, I know they get concerned, about potential that it can't be in as many action scenes and what have you, but I think the concept would have worked really well.
I think she does so well, because at the beginning she's quite jokey and she's like, oh, you can't be serious kind of thing. And you see her very quickly across the 2 episodes just become acceptant of things. She's just, these concepts don't trouble her too much. She's kind of like on the same wavelength as him by the time we get to the end of the 2nd episode. So I do like that sort of development for her. She's a really good addition. I mean, the cast is for a 2-parter, the cast is really good. I like the characters. This has got Keith Jane in it as well as Will, as sort of been transported from another time, and the 2 main characters as well. It's Dennis Leal, isn't it? And
Glyn
Houston. Yeah, as the sort of village elders. I mean, if you took the Malice out, this could be an episode of Midsummer Murders. There would be a war game reenacted. Someone would end up being killed on the cricket pitch, and Barnaby would be sent in. It's got that proper English village feel to it, with the sci-fi-ish element, with the Malice in the church. So it is what they do well, which is the costume drama, like you say. There is, I don't know whether more episodes would have made it better. I think you kind of step into this as it's in full flow. I think, if you had another episode at the beginning, which was sort of like them planning the war games or one of them coming across the malice in the church, I'm not sure it would have added more to it. I don't
think it needed it, James, to be honest. I think it's a bit like Black Orchid, in the fact that I think it works because you land right into the center of the action. Everything's sort of coming to the peak. The malice has obviously got the village, the key villagers under its sort of control, and that sort of evilness, and that we will kill somebody, or we will sacrifice somebody, or whatever that might be, to ultimately get the malice the energy that it needs. I think anything more than 2 just really probably would have dragged a little bit. So in fact, I think the decision to take it down from 4 to 2 in this instance, apart from the little bit of a rushed ending where everything seems to conclude really quickly, I think it's the right balance of episodes.
Imagine if they'd done a malice cutaway that was just the original 1 episode, but with the Civil War actually at the time, and no Doctor and Companions. Could have done that. It'd have worked.
Wow.
Well, I mean, we could do it.
And some alien delegates bobbing in.
That's
I was going to say, on the Polly James front, there's that lovely bit where she's learned how to open the doors on the TARDIS console. I think that's quite a nice. Yeah. That smacks of an add-on rather than being scripted, but I could be wrong.
And Keith Jane, I mean, obviously, comes in, does a good little role. The accent's a little bit wobbly though, for my liking.
The malice come.
I think it's interesting because we've discussed fairly recently, haven't we, historical characters where you're like, you couldn't do it, but there is a part again. It's that sort of thing. Actually, if they did another story and I don't think you could do a full season maybe where Will was there. But there's sort of almost a Jamie-esque vibe, I suppose, because it's not too far out date-wise, is it? Because he's clever with it, I suppose. That's what you got. You got to have historical but clever that can pick things up. He's a really, I think it's a really great character piece Keith does on that. I think because he's attacking a lot of energy for that. It's a shame because I think you could probably get. I don't think you'd have sat well in Frontiers, but I mean, another story probably would have been quite interesting. I mean, you could have done another story. I bet Big Finish probably have, where they're dropping back off and something's happened in 1642 or something. I don't know.
It's on the list to be released, probably.
Jacob Dudman is a great Keith Jane.
And Dennis Lill, I think, is brilliant in this, and Glyn Houston particularly. You always know what you're going to get with Glyn when you've got him in a guest cast, and he's got that sort of stoic character about him, and I think I think he fits this story tremendously well.
I think there's a couple of scenes in this that I really like. One is the sort of cliffhanger when the malice comes closer to the wall and the steam comes out and the sort of doctor's there. But then the scene later on with the ghost swordsman, where they surround him and effectively decapitate him. I mean, you don't actually see that point, but you know it's just happened. It's quite, again, quite a stark thing to happen because it's quite, I know we're talking about the fact that Malice wants to kill everybody in the village, but it's quite sort of light up until you get to sort of that kind of point where suddenly someone's been decapitated and it's like, oh, we better do something about this.
They do want to burn Tegan alive though, don't they, as well?
They do. She's driven like Aunt Sally around the town, isn't she?
Oh dear, it is like that as well. And she gets a change of costume in this one.
Exactly what's she complaining about? She got a lovely new get-up in this one, didn't she?
I want to know who tied the costume up, because it was all tied up at the back when she was there and she got dressed in the room on her own. So who was involved in that?
The whole story in itself.
There's a Big Finish for you.
Oh, it'd be Clara, wouldn't it? Bloody Clara would have turned up and done the dress up for her. I think also a shout out, because I do love the design of the mallet, and it's a combination of production design and visual. So it's sort of between Barry Newbury and Tony Harding. And I think between the to him. A lot of the look of this is really great. It has that sort of, I don't know, it has that kind of that sort of witchy mythological kind of. It's nice. It's a great look. I do remember seeing both Malai, both of them in exhibition. They were in Llangochen. Could be my naturalized accent. The giant Malice had still got the green eyes and stuff, and in the dark sort of corridors, it was quite creepy. And you could push a button, couldn't you? And the other one would move his head and stuff. And they were great. They looked great in the exhibition. I don't think they looked great on the screen, but
it did.
It's my anecdote, kids.
But it's really epic. It's a really epic build, really, isn't it? Because for a two-part story, to build something quite as grand as the Malice, and it moves in and out, and it tilts its head, and it's got a bit of animatronic about it. Sure, it's just people behind the thing, but it looks really, really impressive, and it is something I remember very clearly from having watched this the first time round, how impressive that looked, especially after the murky that we just had in the story before, and even the little Malice that's on the TARDIS wall. It just looks a little bit scary, but the effect is done. The effect is done well for me.
I think the camera went straight out to James looking at his notes, I think, then.
It did. With my eyes making too much noise. I
think it's that beard of yours.
It's not.
You found the secret. It's the secret of Jason's camera hog. It's the beard. You do that.
His beard's bigger than mine.
I just tug my beard and I get the camera back.
Yeah. Well, your beard's bigger than mine in this one, so that's why you're getting all the camera.
As long as you don't tug anything else to get the camera back, Jason, we're okay.
Oh.
Oh dear.
Least sad.
Indeed. Family viewing.
I had a very exciting and prescient point to make there. He got lost in the horrors. Oh, I think this is. I mean, again, coming back to things I don't really understand about this, and I probably missed the subtext, and I need to read the novelization thing. The projected ghost with the disfigurement.
Yes.
Why has he nicked Tegan's handbag? It does. I don't. He nicks her handbag, doesn't he? Then she goes into the barn after him, and an old man appears up in the rafters.
Yeah, there's no explanation for any of that little one sequence, is there?
Because the guy keeps appearing, doesn't he? He appears in the graveyard, and the doctor chases him. So he's presumably a projection from the Civil War when the Malice originated, and he's projected forward for some reason by them. I mean, I don't know what he's been projected for or why, because when Will appears, they're like, he's a physical manifestation. It's quite strange because everyone else has been astral. This is an actual come through time rather than an echo.
Is it because it's getting stronger that it's been testing?
But I don't know why the Malice would get a disfigured guy to come and steal Tegan's handbag. I mean, there's some terrible plots coming up, but as an alien invasion plot point, I'm not sure when he sat there in the church wall to go waiting to break through. He's thinking, I know how to do it. I know how to do it. Tegan's fashionable little leatherette bag. I'll get it off her, and she doesn't get it back. What's in Tegan's handbag?
This is the kind of thing I'm waiting for in the 60th or the centennial special where she's still bitching about the handbag she lost.
Can you imagine that she rocks up at the centennial? She's like, it's been 40 years for me and I've still not found my handbag.
I'm not sure she'll be on screen that long, to be honest, given the rumours.
As soon as she turns up, she'll just want to go home again. Like, it's been 4 years, Doctor, but I want to go home. I've been here ages.
Could you drop me back at Heathrow? Oh,
so anyway, do we have any exotic facts on Doctor Who and the Awakening?
Some facts about this. Considering it's only two episodes, there's quite a few facts. So originally this was
end
called
up being longer than the 2 episodes.
So originally this was called The War Game and the Poltergeist. which I thought that explains a little bit more about the ghostliness, but not really about the malice. There was a scene with Chameleon that was filmed on board the TARDIS in a corridor, which then got canned. So, poor Chameleon. This was shown as a 50-minute omnibus on 625 Live PAL color video tape, which still exists. So there is a 50-minute version of this on color tape.
Isn't that just the 2 episodes together?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's what I mean. But most of the omnibuses weren't kept, but this one was. So there is a videotape of this.
I think that's a shady fact there.
I think. Well,
we were talking about some of the season 22 recently on the Blu-ray box set because they can't clear it up because they don't have the video for it anymore. So there is some video still for this. There's a different style on the lettering on the credits. It's got like a blue outline just for this story. The font has changed. Originally, it was going to be a Dalek 2-parter called The Darkness. But that ended up being scrapped. And it got changed and ended up with, we had Resurrection coming up anyway, so it ended up being scrapped. Barry Newbury this was the last of his set designs, which is quite sad.
It's quite sad actually, because I think Barry's work was it's exemplary throughout any story that he's involved in, I think. Yeah,
there was as I mentioned earlier, because of the water sequence in the previous story, Peter Davison's now got slightly different trousers and jumper. And this was originally written as a 4-parter back in the 70s. So it was originally designed to be a Pertwee story, but it didn't get picked up.
Was it indeed? That's a fact I didn't know, James.
I think what I would say just on the videotape front, I think I'd say that Doctor Who, I think, and I could be wrong, was shot 405 line black and white videotape. There was an experiment for maybe Enemy of the World, where I think it was 65 line black and white, but as a rule, I think it's 405 line black and white, and then it switched to 65 line color from Pertwee till the end. I think it goes from 2-inch to 1-inch for Warriors of the Deep onwards, but all of it is held apparently in deep archive, but it's all digitally transferred to D3.
That's interesting. That I'm surprised. I am very surprised by that last stat of yours, because I thought Eric Sarwood commissioned Eric Pringle to write this story.
He might have had it knocking around the basement where we've been thinking about sending it in before.
Bloody hell! Was it? He was planning the Demons. He was planning the Demons sequel or something. Was he?
Maybe he just watched the Demons and wrote it down. Thought, I'll send this in 5 years. They'll never remember.
It's linked to, because he mentions about the metal is Terraliptian metal.
Tinclavic mines, he says, doesn't he, on Raga.
And in one of the books that came out it was a Sylvester McCoy story, I think it was the Hollow Men, they reference the daemons, and they reference this as not necessarily being connected, but as in like a series of strange goings on in English country villages, as a sort of, this happens quite a lot kind of thing.
I mean, this story is probably slightly most famous for most people, I guess, for the outtake, isn't it, that was used on all the different shows forever and a day, with the horse going through the bit of the church and taking it with it and all. Because that for years, I mean, even when I was a kid, that was something they'd still rock up on. It'll be all right on the night, or when Auntie's bloomers and stuff like that. It would just be that outtake that they have about. Wait, do we have any scores on Doctor Who and the Awakening?
Yeah, I'll make a start then on scoring on this one.
Okay, so James cannot wait to get this wig off. I could just sense it.
Itchy is
when he went through his many facts, then the beard and the moustache actually joined up, so he was like an ice warrior now with no lips talking. It's too early to take it off yet. We're not at the end.
You won't be able to keep it on for the whole of Jason's summation, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I'm not going to make my summation extra long just to, this one's a straightforward enough one. It's a nice little two-part story that I think rocks along at a bit of a pace. Obviously, I don't think that's because it's come down to 2 episodes from 4. The Doctor lands, he's right in the middle of the action, right from the get-go. And actually, there's a little bit of menace in this. And I think they do period dramas particularly well at the BBC, even though it wasn't a period drama, but the costumes work really well. The Malice, I think, is an absolutely superb construction from a special effects perspective. I like that really, I like that a lot, as I've said it in the review. And like I said, it's just a nice straightforward two-parter. Don't really have to think too hard. One that you'd go back and watch every now and again. So this story is going to get a very solid 6 from me.
Back on the solids.
That review lasted so long. My beard's gone grey.
What I love is Jason's vision so poor he didn't actually see that until you mentioned.
He won't look at me when he's doing his
no,
he won't look at me.
No, you see, I can't look at either of you when I'm doing this. I can see you in my monitor screen there, and I have to look away whenever I'm doing it because you lot are normally dancing around and doing things in the background.
Doing the Murka moves.
We've got the Murka dance now.
So no, I didn't see it. You're quite right.
Wow. This is because it's a two-parter. It doesn't outstay its welcome. It moves at quite a pace. There's a few things you can go, well, really, what's happening here? But I like the set design. I like the Malice. I remember watching this when I was at school, and the Malice was actually quite frightening when it came through the wall. It's quite a very visual thing. They get to blow up another church, which is always a good thing in Doctor Who. Just blow up the church. So I gave this 6.5.
I think they must have had a surplus of green goo because the little Malice in the TARDIS, he does that, doesn't he?
Had it left over from the Sea Devils.
There's a bit of Sea Devil eye sick, doesn't he? He's like down the wall, green, get the green goo out. What I love here is that we've all basically forgiven The Awakening for being utter bobbins because it's short. That is all.
I think that's pretty much it.
Another 2 episodes, it'd be like, oh, this is interminable. It's 2, it's 3, because it's just 50 minutes an hour. It's like, no, it doesn't make any sense, but it's quick. It's done with. Because I also gave The Awakening 6.
Wow. Okay.
Which puts it on 18.5, so it's our season leader already.
Woo!
But there are 5 more stories to go. 5 more stories and a new Doctor. I mean, it's all to play for. Because of the cropping, nobody can actually see that I've got the real Doctor Who shirt on. Look, just looks like I'm in a dreary navy shirt, and all the time, classic Doctor Who is just waiting underneath. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
A pleasure as always.
I thought it was the Malice again. It's Jason.
Oh, rude, I tell you.
Imagine Jason breaks through the wall behind, just like that. Where's the vodka?
It's 2 episodes.
Oh dear.
Anyway, join us again. We've got 2 more stories next week. Like, subscribe, say exciting things below.
Right, I've got to get these grey hairs out of my mouth now. Oh.
Did you buy the
That's Jason's line, isn't it?
Honestly. Oh no! Look, you now look like, what's his name? David Dickinson. Actually, no. I'll tell you who you look like. Dickie Davis.
Dickie Davis.
That's what we're talking about. Is this something from ancient times?
I shaved the beard off, I'd look like Lady Painful.
Actually, you do look like Lady Painful there.
Oh dear. Oh, that was hot. Oh.
Right.
Get a drink.
I think it's time for a beer.